popular in the lowest skill bracket, but almost non-existent in the highest skill brackets, that Hag has a lot to answer for when it comes to her pick rate in Dead by Daylight. Unless you're relatively new to the game, you probably haven't crossed paths with her in months. And when you do, it can be either really rough or just outright annihilation. Today, we're shining a light on one of Dead by Daylight's OG killers that's quietly faded into obscurity. The Hag. What went wrong? Why did she fall off so hard? And is she actually better than people give her credit for? Let's find out. Welcome back to Forgotten Foes of the Fog, the series where we take a deep dive into Dead by Daylight's least picked and most overlooked killers to find out why they've been left behind. And today, we're heading deep into Backwater Swamp to visit the Trap Queen herself, the Hag. Lisa Sherwood, also known as the Hag, arrived in Dead by Daylight's third chapter of Flesh and Mud. Lore-wise, she's one of the game's grimmest origin stories. Survivor turned cannibalistic witch warped by unspeakable trauma and dark magic. But in gameplay terms, she's a trap-based killer focused on map control. Her power, Blackened Catalyst, lets her place up to 10 traps around the map. When a survivor triggers a trap, dependent on add-ons, a mud-sculpted phantom will pop up, and Hag can choose to teleport to it instantly. In theory, it's an incredible map denial and area control tool. She moves at 4.4 meters per second, which is nearly 10% slower than the average killer, which makes her one of the slowest killers to exist in the game. But what she lacks in speed, she more than makes up for with reactive pressure and potential for brutal snowballs. At least on paper. So, why did Hag drop off so hard? Well, there's a few reasons. Firstly, her core concept has not evolved with the game. Back in 2016, when the game was fresh, the idea of laying down traps and teleporting across the map to punish survivors was genuinely terrifying. But as Dead by Daylight has evolved, with faster survivors, stronger perks, tighter map reworks, and killers with high mobility powers, the Hag has stayed exactly where she has been all the time, almost stuck in the game's early years. Hag's outdated mechanics were left behind, and she was a killer built for 2016 DBD, still trying to survive in 2025. Secondly, she's painfully setup dependent. Every game starts the same, a stroll around the map placing traps, trolling between key pathing areas, and praying survivors don't notice your markings. Hag needs time to place any traps, and they are particularly effective around key objective areas such as progressing generators, lit hex totems, or even vital loops like Killer Shack. However, every second the Hag spends placing those traps is valuable time which good survivors will take to slam objectives. The stinger is, though, if she doesn't get that early control, she's immediately behind and it's a game of catch-up for even the most skilled player. And when survivors do trigger traps, teleporting isn't exactly smooth. It's clunky, and players often experience input delays, collision problems, and weird hitboxes. In today's meta, where split-second reactions decide chases, that hesitation can mean the difference between life or death. Literally. Also, coordinated teams, the sort you will find in high skill level brackets, know exactly how to shut down the Hag. They will simply erase traps, crouch over hotspot areas, and some even have enough game knowledge to predict the Hag's moves with good map awareness. Once survivors know how to play around the Hag, it's shockingly easy to avoid her pressure entirely and turn her into one of the slowest killers in the game with essentially zero power. Another big issue, her passive and defensive playstyle. The Hag naturally gravitates towards a defensive strategy in particular moments of each match. Whether this be securing an area around a hooked survivor, protecting a hex totem, or even trapping up key pathing areas between objectives. It all involves creating a minefield, which she passively tries to lure survivors into. Setting up the traps, creating mind games to force survivors into her minefields, and even pressurizing loops can easily stall the game. But depending where you are in the life cycle of your trial, it could mean the Hag is giving up pressure elsewhere and losing valuable time. Or, if you were in an endgame scenario, it could easily turn the game into a tedious stalemate situation. The whole match can easily turn into a slow, frustrating grind for both sides if players are not strategic or careful. Survivors can get annoyed by the stall tactics, and the Hag players can get frustrated with the slow development of the trial. As an honourable mention, it is also long debated that the Hag suffers from one of the worst camera angles in the game. As she is a shorter killer, her viewpoint sits much lower than other killers, and that can throw off your depth perception in loops and even tight chases. What should be guaranteed hits can easily turn into awkward whiffs, And in a game where milliseconds and muscle memory matter, that extra bit of clunk is brutal. But here's the thing, in the right hands, Hag can still be lethal. Players who master trap placement, mind games, and area control can turn matches around in seconds. She's one of the few killers who can completely flip a losing game with a well thought out strategy and decent game knowledge. Her best builds will lean on slowdown perks such as Corrupt Intervention, Deadlock, and Hex Ruin. They will allow her to buy enough time to set her devastatingly brutal stage, and it may be niche, but if survivors slip up, it can be absolutely devastating. So, is the Hag one of Dead by Daylight's worst killers? Not quite, but she is clunky, outdated, and tough to justify in a modern high-speed meta. Unless behavior gives her a meaningful rework, I would strongly imagine she will stay buried in the fog. But what do you think? Would you buff the Hag, or would you let her sink deeper into obscurity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And in next week's episode, we will be looking all about the artist, the original concept by Dead by Daylight, who constantly stays in the bottom picks of the killer roster. And we're gonna find out why. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and make sure you hit subscribe and that bell button so you can be one of the first to catch the next episode of Forgotten Foes of the Fog. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.